I was like, you know what? If this doesn't work out and I invest in this bank and it doesn't, I always know the road back home, but I don't want to wake up in 10 years and have felt like I should have taken the risk and then never known.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back to another episode of the Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. Landry Fields here, and excited for one of my more recent friends here coming on the show today to talk about business in general. I think stepping outside of our comfort zone is going to be a key topic of the conversation today, but don't want to give too much away, so we'll just jump right into it. And welcome JP Blevins to the Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. JP, appreciate you coming on the show.
Absolutely, Landry. Happy to be here.
As we always start every episode out, just hop back in the DeLorean and kind of tell us about. Obviously, people know who you are maybe as a basketball player, but who you were kind of growing up and then where we are today. And you kind of moved back to the state of Kentucky, Blue Commonwealth, so to speak, here recently. And excited to have you back, obviously, and what you're doing and what you were doing in that previous time between now and basketball back then.
Sure. Well, I'll give you kind of the 10,000 foot over. You stop me and say what point you want to dive in. But yeah, so I grew up in a real small town in South Central Kentucky, Edmonton, Kentucky, so Metcalfe County.
Yep.
One stoplight town. Not a lot has changed in 50 years, but kind of grew up with a dream, to play basketball up here. My dad sent me to basketball camp when I was in fourth grade. Man, I just left there. I was like, I don't care what I do in this world, but man, I want to play basketball.
Did I tell you I spent like 8 years in one stoplight town?
What's that?
Powell County.
Oh, okay. You're from Powell County?
I mean, kind of. We're family's from Lexington, but we spent 8 years in Powell County, which is a one stoplight town too. Yes. Most people don't know that about me.
So you know that.
Otherwise, my accent would be a lot thicker if I grew up there.
From being in a one stoplight town, not a lot to do, so I just played basketball all the time. Yeah. But you grew up with that dream. That dream came true. I was offered a scholarship by Rick Pitino as a junior, and he left my senior year to go coach the Celtics. He broke every Kentuckian's heart at that time, including mine. And so I ended up playing all 4 years for Tubby, and it was a dream come true, even though my career didn't really go exactly how I'd hoped.
He seemed like a coach everybody truly loved, even the players in that sense, playing for him.
Tubby?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tubby's a great guy. I mean, look, I think if you get into I don't know if everyone loves their coach in college. Sure. I think I think he's a good man. Yeah. Maybe not the most fun offensively to play for.
Sure.
Everybody's got their own issues, but you don't want to go down this rabbit hole.
No.
So I got out, and kind of like a lot of people that play sports, my identity was really in sports growing up, and that's all I really cared about. And kind of get the yellow pad out, and like, man, what am I going to do now? And kind of start writing down my goals, and I. Always been a dreamer. That's not really been a problem of mine. So I had some big ones, and I was like, man, how am I going to do that? And I had some really big financial goals. And
speaking to the goals part real quick, if we could, I think that's like something that, I wish I would have done a lot sooner. And I think people don't do enough of like, okay, I want to do that with my kids. Yeah. And maybe you're the same, like, you get to college, you're always like, you got to have your future planned out, whatnot. Like that doesn't happen, obviously, usually that way. But it's like, but what are your goals in life? What do you want? So then and figuring out the path of how do I get there type of a scenario, I think it's an art that, not an art, but it's just a good rule practice that we just don't do enough.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's true. Like somebody's told me, like those people spend more time planning like their wedding and their honeymoon than they do their life. And you like think about it, and you're like, man, like 9 months that they think about that. Then like people just don't actually think about where I want to go.
That's so true.
It's wild, so true. But fortunately. That has really come naturally to me. I've always kind of been someone that's just kind of been out in the future. In fact, I have to kind of fight against that to really be present and not miss the beauty of what's in front of me because I'm dreaming of
balance is everything.
Where I'm going. But so certainly something I've believed in. So I just started writing, and I was like, financially, I didn't grow up in a business family. I wasn't surrounded by entrepreneurs, but when I looked at the financial goals I had, I was like, well, there's only 3 or 4 ways to get there. And I wasn't part of the fortunate club that was going to inherit it. So I was like, I'm going to have to figure this out.
Yeah.
At 23, I didn't really see myself owning a business, but certainly owning a business was a way. I thought like I could work my way up through a company and, join, be a part of the C-suite and, or maybe I could get into coaching and be like John Calipari. And at 22, I really didn't see that, but But then when I looked at investing, I was like, and that one really grabbed me because I was fascinated with, I didn't have any money, but I was fascinated that I don't have to be the originator of the idea, that I can actually find other people that I believe in that have the genius for building businesses, invest in them or their concepts and grow net worth that way.
Sometimes that's smarter than like me trying to grow things from the ground up.
Yeah, so you kind of got to know yourself. So at 23, I wasn't ready to start a business, and I just didn't. But I've had pretty good instincts and pretty good street smarts, and could recognize people that I looked up to, and so I kind of thought like my path would be the stock market. And really fell in love with the market in my early 20s. I started trading, learned some risk management rules that have paid off over the course of 25 years. And, but then, like every time I would read about, folks that had really made a big jump in their net worth and in their investing career, they'd all owned a piece of equity in something. That started small, that really grew. So, that seed was planted in the back of my mind because I didn't come from this. I didn't even major in business, but I would just read and listen to everything I could get my hands on in finance to kind of self teach myself.
Yeah.
So at 28, and I had an opportunity to follow a serial entrepreneur named Chip Mahan to North Carolina to be a part of a startup bank.
Right.
And so that took me on quite an entrepreneurial journey to North Carolina. So I'm going to stop here because we can get all kinds of craziness into that. So spent 10 years in North Carolina, moved back to Kentucky 4 years ago. Where I'm here now.
And so we can talk about that a little more as far as obviously those turned out to be extremely good decisions as far as from a financial standpoint and what you all did there. Won't go into that, but I know having obviously conversations with you prior and stuff like that, that same thing with like me starting a couple both companies that I've started, that like the path of success seems like people see the finishing, where you end up type of scenario, or where you're kind of at now, and don't see like there's that whole picture of like the small iceberg, and then there's like all the growth that was underneath everything it took to get above the water, so to speak. We'll talk a little bit about that, because like the same, like, I mean, it's just terrifying sometimes when you're just like, I'm gonna either start this journey and I don't really know nothing. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, or two, I'm moving away. On paper it seems like a good idea, but at the same time it's difficult, and it's sometimes easy to kind of stay where we're at in our comfort level of what we know and who we know and so forth. But obviously that was a big jump, I know.
Sure.
In North Carolina, not knowing anybody really.
Yeah, you hit on a good thing. So I'll mention two things to that point regarding all the work that nobody sees. I mean, that's a lesson I learned in sports growing up. Like when I had a dream in the fourth grade to play basketball at Kentucky, my parents built a court in the backyard, and I just my mom she kind of just implanted this belief in myself. Like if I was willing to go down to that court every night and work and put in the work, like true work. Yeah, this is not going down, shoot a few shots. Like this is actually busting it and really getting out, and I'm willing to do that every day. And so to do that for 10 years, hoping that one day it pays off, right? Like every day.
Yeah. And not knowing if it will.
And not knowing, and like most of the things that I've accomplished in life, it's taken a decade to really break through. So the point that you're talking about, I learned the lesson at 9 on a basketball court. Yeah. So I was 28 and I had an opportunity to go to North Carolina to be a part of this. And in my mind, I'm thinking, man, I'm kind of comfortable in Kentucky. The one thing about playing basketball here is it does give you some name recognition, whether you want to do sales or, you can get indoors and people know who you are. And that helps in business. All my friends are here. My family's down the road, completely in my comfort zone, but I didn't feel like I was scaling and I was growing. And, that was a point where I had to do some real reflection and say, is the Lord calling me to take a risk and leave my comfort zone? And so there's
a bit of like, everybody thinks they know who I am, or tells me who I am, and I'm a great this, that. But it's like sometimes you probably like me feel like I don't really know who I am still, type of thing.
I think there was the sports identity, and maybe there was a little bit of like there's more to me than just sports. maybe I can prove it to myself that I can go start somewhere from ground floor. So the opportunity was to go to North Carolina and be a part of a bank. So Landry, I didn't go to business school and hadn't been in banking. Now I had been investing and I was financially savvy because of just being self-taught. But so I'm thinking to myself, so let me get this straight. I'm thinking about leaving everything I know and any advantage I have to move to a place where I know one person to do something I know nothing about. But after a lot of prayer, I just felt I'm 29, and look, if this doesn't work out, at that time I was 29. Yeah, Lord, I wish that was still the case. I was like, you know what? If this doesn't work out, and I invest in this bank, and it doesn't, I always know the road back home, but I don't want to wake up in 10 years and have felt like I should have taken the risk and then never known. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be in that chair. I can deal with not working out. I can't deal with that one.
Yeah.
So, and then there was like this Richard Branson quote that was sticking in my mind. I had read his book a couple years prior to this, and it was like, when a great opportunity presents itself, even if you don't know what you're doing, say yes and figure it out. And so
that's literally epitome of me. And I'll be honest, that's another story.
That one, I was like, man, this feels like an awesome opportunity, because I was going to be a part of a group of people that were playing the game at a real high level.
Yeah.
The guy that I was joining had taken a company public, had done it a couple times. So it was like batting 100%, 100% success with things they've tried before. Incredibly progressive minded and sharp. Like, it's almost like 5 steps ahead, and everybody else is the chess and the checkers thing. But then the third part of that was like, man, there's just really good people. And man, I was like, if I'm going to take a risk and write an uncomfortable check and move my life to North Carolina, that's kind of the framework, right? Track record, incredibly smart, great folks. And so, man, I put the dog in the car, Maximus, my golden retriever. I packed up everything I owned. I stuck it in my car. I drove 10 hours to Wilmington, North Carolina. Got there, didn't know what I was doing. And so I was like, well, we're going to have to figure this out. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just start showing up before everybody else. I'll smile at everybody. I'll print these credit memos out and take them home, figure out how to lend money. And so long story short, that little story of Live Oak Bank, I got there and there were 15 people, and we were doing, a couple $100 million of loan volume across the country. Live Oak is a small business lender that works with niche industries. So we were lending to 2 industries, veterinarians and independent pharmacists.
Especially the certain loan.
Through using the SBA loan product. Right. Yeah. And so today, Live Oak is the largest SBA lender in the country. There's 1,200 people there. Bank went public in 2015, ended up becoming chief revenue officer, part of the C-suite in 2017, a couple of years after the bank went public. And it's been a wild, wild ride.
Nothing you would have dreamed of probably happening in some respects.
But the funny thing is like, when you reflect on it, there's certainly a few things. I reflect on, my faith is really important to me. I reflect on the couple weeks of praying, can I really leave? And feeling led to leave my comfort zone. But the other thing is, like, if my grandkids ask me, what did you really get right? No doubt I took a risk and I've worked hard, but man, I really bet on the right dude. Like, I found the right guy to follow. And back to what I was saying when I was 22, like, I thought it was very interesting that I could find people that had the genius of building businesses.
Yeah.
Bet on them through investment and then ride along with them. So the other thing that happened really cool is when we started the bank, we had to have a software to really just drive efficiency. We were lending money across the country without branches. So we built software on top of Force.com's platform to run our bank. So this is workflow, cloud documentation, efficiency, transparency, all the dashboards, all this stuff. So
really at a time when that wasn't really being utilized.
Yeah, I mean, everyone in 2009, 2010 thought the only way you grow a bank is just build branches.
Yeah.
So Chip, and this is his genius, was looking down the road and it's like, 15 years, nobody's going to go into a branch. it's all going to be on your phone. But
Yeah.
this was way before people were thinking
This
that
would have
way.
been right as the iPhone was coming out, honestly.
Yeah, so like literally in banks, like credit files were in manila folders in the back of the cabinet in the vault.
Same thing with insurance. I mean, there's so many insurance actually still doing that right now these days. But yeah.
So so we built the software to run the bank, and then what happened was you could see our ROE and ROA, and other bank presidents and CEOs were like, "How are you guys running your bank so efficiently?" And we'd show them the software, and can we? Is there a way we could license that from you? And so we realized we had a completely separate company in 2011. We seeded a software company, spun it out from the bank. So that company today is called nCino, N-C-I-N-O. Stock symbol is NCNO. So it went public in 2020 at a big valuation. That company has 4,000 people today, is in 7 of the 10 largest banks in the country. So, Landry, I have had a front row seat to kind of being a part of two things. That one started with 15 people, the other started with 0, that both became unicorns and billion-dollar companies and rang the bell on the NASDAQ. And I don't say that to brag about how smart I am, but I got with some really, really great
That's
folks.
a great point, because like for me, when I started all my businesses, that was me betting on myself. And there's a lot of people that will do that, but there's a lot of people that it's just not them. Like, but they could do like you. I mean, and find the people they could bet on. And I think if you can do one of those two, there's no excuse, but there's always an opportunity to do one of those two type of scenario.
Yeah.
Both of them take huge steps of faith and courage and stepping outside of comfort zones. One might have more sleepless nights if you're the one trying to build it from the ground up, like myself.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, I mean, you said had obviously, worked your butt off, obviously down there in Wilmington and so forth as well. So, I mean, it's just an amazing story and such a way to, I think, like I said, I love the story. That's why I wanted you to come on here, just as a way to encourage, especially the next generation coming up, or even those that are still think, well, I'm too old for this, or trying to, we had somebody in here that didn't start their investing real estate wise side of things until they were like in their 40s, or you take, Colonel Sanders and didn't really even do anything until he was like 60s and stuff like that. And just like, there's so much time. I mean, theoretically, there's so much time left. We don't know how much time each one of us has, but my assumption is I'll live till old age, and as long as I'm going to go with that assumption, I'm gonna do all I can until I get there. Especially with like you said, no regrets. Like you just no regrets, as the tattoo says, right? But yeah, I mean that's just awesome. And then all that. Not wrapping it in a bonus necessarily, but kind of what's the future idea now as far as what you're wanting to do?
I can get in a little bit of that. I will say, just to your point though about where you are with what you have. I mean, as long as capitalism survives in this country, which I feel pretty good about, there's opportunity. I mean, there's always going to be somebody with their friend that has an idea that are in their garage trying to build something. They're going to need money. They're going to get off to a start. They're going to need more money. Yeah. That company's going to go public. And when they go public, you're going to have a chance to invest in that company in the very early years. Yeah. And I think that's the coolest thing of all, right? Like, I don't have to I can find, whether that's through the public markets or the private markets.
Yep.
I just think that's really encouraging for someone that maybe doesn't grow up in the business world or surrounded by entrepreneurs, that you can teach yourself this game. And there's lots of avenues to get there.
And to that point about it surviving, I mean, I just kind of finished, and I love going and rewatching some of these movies like Band of Brothers and so forth like that. Just to remind myself of like, man, I feel like I'm a pretty weak person compared to these kids that were in 1940s, where you think about the Great Depression, et cetera. And there was always ways, if you thought and looked outside the box or figured out, what's happening, where's the hockey puck going, so to speak, and things like that, that even in the times where sometimes right now, like, it may seem pretty dire out there but there's still opportunity out there. And you've got to look past that and know that, we'll probably still be okay. I've got a God that loves me, and so it's worth. So I'm just going to keep working hard and loving people, and we'll see where we're at the end of the day, right?
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that was big for me is, at 22, like, I didn't have any money, but I did look at a compounding chart. Yeah. And I ran it all the way out, right? And I was like, wait a minute. So, like, if I am really disciplined, I'm actually spending less than I actually have coming in, whatever that is. And I am actually devoted to this long-term game of investing. I mean, seared into my brain is, 50%, 15% return doubles every 5 years, compounded. Now, 15% isn't easy to grab, but you can. And so then it becomes the search for where to invest the money. But the discipline of this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. I was never into the get rich quick stuff. Right now, I was fortunate enough through private investment, to really expedite the compounding. Because you hit some stuff that, gave you outsized returns. But I think anyone that's never looked at a compounding chart to see the power of money later in life with a disciplined approach, I would advise to go do that, because it's pretty powerful. And that, and even when I had $10,000, it was like, all right, how do I become a millionaire? When you're young, there's not super mature things. I just want to be a millionaire. So you're like, all right, how many years would it take at this % return, saving and investing this? And so it really kind of started me on this course that it was possible. That's all I needed. And
when investing, I think it's the way you're pointing to, as far as when it hits you, I think there's three things that happen when we can see that. And one of those wasn't that one for me, because my dad was in financial or investments and so forth, and knew that. But people that see like, the compounding aspect, like you just mentioned, for me, it was I can invest in real estate, get depreciation and appreciation and rent type of scenario. Or three, like you said, if you've learned into like, I can invest in a business and get more of an equity return as like that. I think, it's one of those three things a lot of times where I think you're like, wait a minute, let's figure out how to do that somehow. Or even if it's on the side, like you're saying, it doesn't even have to be your full-time thing, but just the slow, the steady, the marathon aspect like you're talking about. And if like for me, I was like, I'm willing to know that I've got a good thing going, but I'm going to sacrifice on the front end here, knowing that it should pay off in the long run. And if not, I still got a wife that loves me, and God loves me, and family that will support me type of scenario.
Delayed gratification is probably a pretty good lesson to learn.
Probably harder and harder these days.
It feels like it's harder when you talk to folks about how quick they want it. Great if you catch a break and it speeds up, but I don't think that's the way the game was supposed to be played. I think it's a long game, it's a marathon, and you do the right thing over many years and try to make good decisions. And typically in the end, some of that works out.
Because in my opinion, like if I was like, I'm going to start this business, worst case, I learned a ton, and I get to take that and try to reuse it in whatever else is next. Best case, one of these businesses hits and works out, and you don't only need one to really work and hit, so to speak.
So this study has always stuck with me. So when I was 25, I read a study, and it was a bunch of hospice nurses that had went around and interviewed people that basically they just gathered like the most common answer to what they found people would say in their last couple of weeks of life. When they asked them this question, it was like, if you had to do it all over again, would you do anything different? And the first thing they said, there were three answers. The first thing was, I would slow down. I just went too fast. I mean, this is really a miracle that we're here. And the Lord woke me up this morning. I got breath in my lungs. I just went too fast, right? I would slow down, enjoy the miracle, whatever that looks like. The second thing was like, and this is what you're talking about, is they said, I played it too safe. Mm-hmm. There were things I wanted to do. There were dreams I had, but I never took the risk, and I don't even care if it worked out. I just would have liked to have known by trying. So, and then the third thing was I would do something that would live on after me, whatever that looks like. But like, I think start with the end in mind. If the most common answer to people that have a week left to live say one of the things I regret is I played it too safe. I'm not talking about putting your family at risk where you don't have a house if something goes right, but I think everything you truly want is like just on the other side of fear. So at some point you got to stare that thing down.
Yeah, and 100%.
That's part of it.
And honestly, the whole aspect of it going so fast was, I just remember my grandfather being one of the things he said towards the end of his life and so forth, and that's part of it, like that, and those two things exactly. I don't know how I learned that earlier on, but I was like, well, I tell you what, I take that back. The slowing things down to something I think I've had to teach myself a bit, because when you're in your 30s, and I'm almost out of them now, but it's like, it's such a grind in your 30s to trying to figure out life, like as an adult, as a career, business. Yes. I got married before I was even 30, so you're like finding all the faults about yourself, became a dad when I was like in my late 20s, and then you're like, that even more so shines a light on your imperfections and so forth.
Oh yeah.
And in some ways, I'm like, man, 40 sounds pretty good here in a year or so. Like, I don't know, maybe. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, like you said, it's on the other side of fear is so much more as far as opportunities, either joy, and it's not what we think it is most of the time as far as what those end up being the answers to what we thought we were trying to find all
Yeah,
kind
I mean, one of my favorite quotes in the world is the Theodore Roosevelt quote. I mean, it's the man in the arena, right? And if you haven't read that, you should go read it. I wish I could recite it word for word, but basically it's, man, I've known the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, but in victory or defeat, whether each one come, at least I won't be on the sideline with the cold and timid souls that knew neither victory nor defeat.
Yeah.
So get in the arena.
Yeah.
Like whatever that is for you, you got to kind of be in the arena, get bloodied up, get knocked down. Fine, you'll learn something out about yourself, or the highest of highs of victory are come from when you cross over into that fear and that risk. Yeah. And but I think that's where just at the end, like I can deal with the victory or the defeat. I've had them both, plenty on both sides. And but I will say I give myself credit for getting in the arena and playing the game.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and it's something I think, like I said, it's so valuable that I think it's harder and harder for younger kids or youth or people in general to think in this day and age that everybody's more successful than they are, or somehow knows more than they do, or somehow like they'll always be the one that never makes it or fails, or a fear of that failure is harder and harder, I think, to face these days. And back to the Band of Brothers thing, that's why I was like, you know what, I think these guys were in, or just in general, some of these points in American history or so forth, just like, oh man, if I was in those shoes, I'd be terrified out of my wits as well. But sometimes it's like, yeah, we're all terrified, as some of these quotes in these movies, but you just you're in there together, and you got some people you can rely on, and to be there with you shoulder to shoulder, and that's all you can ask for, and go do it, and you learn a whole lot about yourself in that.
Oh man, no, yeah, and totally right. And then for the people out there, they're like, man, I'm just not smart enough to figure out investing, and so. And this thought came to me. So I became, and I'm not saying this to brag, but just to make a point, I didn't go to business school.
Right.
And I had never worked at a bank. And in 2017, I was running all of revenue and sales at a publicly traded bank. I say that, a lot of grace, a lot of luck, right time, right place, right people, all that. But I will say there's never been a better time in the world to be able to teach yourself what you need to learn to do what you need to do. You literally are one podcast, one YouTube clip, one master class. Like it has never been easier to teach yourself
all the time
a skill or and I'm actually. So anyway, I just say that because there was a thought of me of like, I don't like being banking. I don't know any banking. Like, why am I? And so I've just kind of taught myself, like, you just got to throw all that stuff out.
Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. I say like a lot to people. I'm like, man, YouTube, like my kids growing up with YouTube and being able to learn anything they want to at their fingertips. I mean, there's a lot of negative, obviously, that can come with those things, but teaching it from using it as a tool in a good way, I'm like, it didn't exist back when we were in college. And it was like, man, if I had that then, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'd be a lot further in some respects, but I don't really care about the whole idea of being further. It's just like, but hey, it's a tool now, and you're right. It's the best time ever to learn anything you want to possibly learn, and it's right there. But it's the fear that's holding you back is the only excuse you got now.
It's like, you can line up 100 people in front of me, and if I'm going to start a company tomorrow, just show me the hungriest dude or the hungriest woman, because if you got a hunger about you and you're a self-starter, you can learn what you need to learn to do. And
there's a sermon, Pastor, I'm sure you're familiar with too, but I remember forgetting an example he made, which was a gymnast on a balance beam. And the gymnasts, what happens if they're so afraid to fall that they go up there to do their performance, and all they do is basically hug and hold on to the balance beam so they don't fall off, finish their routine, get off, throw their hands up like, yeah, I did it. And you're like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, the idea is, you're going to fall sometimes type of scenario. Yeah. And you might not win the gold medal every time, but like you got to get it back up and try it again type of scenario. You can't be afraid to fall.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I also think like too, and you pay attention to your mind, the way you think and the way other people think. And I think our minds are wired to think about what's the worst possible thing and what could go wrong. And I think 95% of our fears in life never happen, but we experience them because they're in our mind.
Yep.
But actually what actually plays out that I'm fearful of is probably pretty small. But it's hard to overcome some of that thinking sometimes.
Yeah, totally agree. as far as, I mean, I know you probably won't want to get into it, but what's kind of the next plan for your future? And maybe not details, but
yeah, no, I'll give you a little flavor. So I moved back to Kentucky 4 years ago. I left Live Oak a year and a half ago, all amicably. The guy that started the bank is like a second father to me. It was just time for a new challenge, and I kind of thought that, man, I would just get back to just trading and trade my own money. That's what I really love to do, and just be an angel investor. My antenna's always up for private investment. It's really kind of how I've cut my teeth a lot on the financial side, But then I started talking with a couple buddies that have been financial advisors for 20 years that I really respect, who really, really know their stuff, and they're great folks. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be fun to go build something, in an industry I'm as passionate about as wealth creation?
Yeah.
So, we're looking to partner and come together. And, I think over the summer you'll be able to see a logo up that has a family wealth office here in town. Try to go build a brand, do some things. I think we've got some cool ideas to flip that industry on its head a little bit. So
there you go.
More to come on that, but I think that's going to be the next chapter for me on the business side.
There you go. Maybe we'll have to do it again here in a couple of years.
There we go.
We'll see.
Yes.
Well, hey, I appreciate the time and coming down and giving us your story, any advice that you had in that sense, and hopefully we can impact somebody through this. But appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate you coming down.
I absolutely enjoyed it.
Thanks, JP.
Thanks, Landry.
We'll see you all next week on another episode of the Keys to the Commonwealth.